Hey everyone, and welcome back to Robots vs. Vampires, the show where sci-fi and fantasy collide.
I know, right?
I'm Adrian Smith, your host for this wild ride.
And I'm Julia Jones. I'll be helping unpack today's story.
Okay, so get this. We're diving into a story about a vampire
Okay.
who's breaking all the stereotypes.
Right.
No brooding in castles, no aversion to garlic, and definitely no fangs.
Whoa, that's a twist on the classic vampire myth.
Right?
Our protagonist, Milo, is a teenage vampire born without fangs.
Really?
Which, in his world, is basically like being a superhero with a kryptonite allergy.
You'd think immortality and super strength would be enough.
Yeah, you would think.
But in this vampire society, fangs were the ultimate status symbol.
Absolutely. The story really digs into how this physical difference impacts Milo's life.
Yeah.
You know, he's ridiculed by his peers, considered weak by his family.
Hmm.
It's a stark contrast to the powerful, intimidating figures we usually associate with vampires.
It makes you wonder, how does a vampire who can't even bite find his place in a world obsessed with power and dominance?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Instead of trying to fit in, Milo leans into his other strengths.
Oh, okay.
He's incredibly agile and resourceful, but more importantly, he has a thirst for knowledge.
So instead of hitting the gym to bulk up, he hits the library to wise up. I like this guy already.
Exactly. He immerses himself in ancient lore and forgotten histories, searching for stories of other fangless vampires.
Wow. And what does he find?
What he finds is truly inspiring.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Milo discovers tales of these extraordinary fangless vampires who, despite their perceived weakness, mastered forgotten magic, outsmarted their enemies,
Well,
and became legendary figures.
so it's like he's finding role models who prove that strength can come in many forms. It's a classic underdog story, but with a vampire twist.
You said these stories give Milo hope, showing him that he can forge his own path,
Right.
even if it means defying tradition and expectation.
But every hero needs a challenge, right? What throws a wrench into Milo's quest for self-discovery?
Enter the antagonist, Lord Draxon, a tyrannical vampire lord straight out of your nightmares.
Oh, no.
He's power-hungry, ruthless, and wants to enslave all supernatural creatures under his rule.
Oh, man, a classic power-hungry villain. I bet Milo sees this as his chance to prove everyone wrong and step up as the unlikely hero, right?
Exactly. Draxon's threat becomes Milo's opportunity to not only protect his community, but to finally show everyone what he's truly capable of.
But if he can't fight with fangs and brute force like the other vampires, how does he plan to take on this seemingly invincible villain?
That's where his research and ingenuity come into play. Remember all those tales of forgotten magic and cunning tactics?
Yeah.
They become Milo's blueprint for taking down Draxon.
So instead of a physical showdown, we're going to see a battle of wits. This is where things get really exciting.
Absolutely. Milo realizes that brute force won't work against Draxon, especially in his fortress, which is designed to be impenetrable.
So how does he get past those defenses? Does he have some secret vampire ninja skills we don't know about?
He gets creative, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Remember, Draxon, like most traditional vampires, has a major weakness:
Yeah, that is.
sunlight. But Milo finds a way to turn this weakness into his weapon.
Okay, I have to know, how do you weaponize sunlight?
He uses what he calls sun-drenched garlic.
Sun-drenched garlic. Now, that's something I've never heard of.
Yeah.
What is that exactly, and how does it work?
It's essentially garlic that's been exposed to concentrated sunlight for a prolonged period, amplifying its potency.
Ah.
He creates a sort of allergy bomb using this that completely incapacitates the guards, clearing his path.
Wow. Talk about thinking outside the coffin.
Yeah.
It seems like Milo's not just fighting Draxon,
Right.
but the very idea of what a vampire is supposed to be.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a brilliant subversion of the trope, but the sun-drenched garlic is just the beginning.
There's more.
Milo also uses carefully positioned mirrors to exploit the guards' heightened senses, turning their own strengths against them.
So he's playing a game of strategic deception, using the environment and the vampire's own biology to his advantage to some next-level vampire hunting.
He's a true innovator now. Remember those ancient glyphs he researched, the ones associated with forgotten vampire magic?
Yes.
Well, he incorporates those into the fortress walls, creating light-based wards.
Wait, hold on. Light-based wards? What are those exactly? Do they have something to do with his sun-drenched garlic concoction?
Not quite, though. Both play on light in interesting ways. These wards are more like magical booby traps triggered by light. Imagine intricate patterns woven into the walls, glowing with an energy that's unbearable to a vampire's senses.
So he's turning the fortress itself into a weapon that's incredibly clever.
It is, and this is where we leave our listeners in suspense, wondering how Milo will utilize these wards in his ultimate confrontation with Lord Draxon.
Welcome back to Robots vs. Vampires. We're exploring that fascinating showdown between Milo, our resourceful fangless vampire, and the tyrannical Lord Draxon.
Yeah, we left off with Milo strategically infiltrating Draxon's fortress, using his knowledge of vampire weaknesses and forgotten magic to turn the tables.
It's like he's playing 4D chess while everyone else is stuck on checkers.
Exactly. He's using everything at his disposal, even those things that are supposed to be his weaknesses, to outmaneuver Draxon.
So let's talk about these light-based wards. How do they factor into Milo's plan?
They're key to disrupting Draxon's power. Remember, the fortress was designed to keep intruders out, but Milo's turned that design on its head. The wards are woven into the very structure, essentially turning the fortress into a giant light trap.
I can only imagine the look on Draxon's face when those wards are activated.
Yeah.
He thinks he's safe in his fortress, only to find out it's his own personal light show from hell.
Oh, it's a moment of pure poetic justice. Here's this all-powerful vampire lord, suddenly vulnerable in his own stronghold, and it's all thanks to the ingenuity of the vampire he dismissed as weak.
It's a powerful message about underestimating those who think differently, but light wards alone can't defeat a vampire lord, right? What's Milo's finishing move?
He saved his trump card for the final confrontation, a vial of concentrated sunlight.
Hold on, concentrated sunlight. How is that even possible?
Yeah.
It sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
It is where the story blends fantasy and scientific concepts in a really intriguing way. We don't get a detailed explanation of the mechanics, but it's presented as a rare and potent form of vampire weak in magic, almost like a distillation of sunlight's essence.
So it's like he's bottled up the sun's power and is ready to unleash it on Draxon.
Exactly. And think about the symbolism here. Sunlight, typically a vampire's ultimate weakness, is now Milo's most potent weapon. It's a beautiful representation of how he's flipped the script, turning his perceived flaw into a source of strength.
It's a classic underdog story, but with a unique twist, it really challenges those traditional notions of power, showing that true strength can come from embracing what makes you different.
Absolutely. So picture this Draxon, weakened and disoriented by the light wards, is caught completely off guard when Milo throws the vial.
Okay, I need to know what happens next. Does Draxon just burst into flames like in those old vampire movies?
It's even more dramatic than that. He screams as the concentrated sunlight hits him, his body dissolving into ash as if the sun itself has consumed him.
Wow, talk about a spectacular exit.
Mm-hmm.
Milo single-handedly took down a tyrannical vampire lord, not with brute force, but with strategy cunning and a little bit of sunshine.
It's a truly satisfying victory, especially for those who've been rooting for the underdog. But what's even more interesting is what Milo does next. He doesn't seize power or declare himself the new ruler.
Wait, what? He doesn't take over? I thought that was the whole point of defeating the evil overlords.
That's what makes this story so unique. Instead of following the traditional power grab narrative, Milo does something completely unexpected. He offers the other supernatural creatures, the ones who have been living under Draxon's oppressive rule, a chance for peace.
Now that's a twist. He could have easily become the new Draxon, ruling through fear and intimidation, but instead he chooses a different path. It makes you wonder what motivates him to make such a radical choice.
I think it goes back to his own experiences. He knows what it's like to be ostracized and judged for being different. He doesn't want to perpetuate that cycle of fear and division.
So instead of seeking revenge or power, he's trying to break the cycle of violence and create a more inclusive world.
Exactly. It's a powerful statement about choosing compassion over dominance, understanding over prejudice.
It's definitely not the typical vampire story we're used to, but it's a refreshing change of pace. It makes you think about the different ways strength can manifest, not just through physical power, but through empathy and a desire to create a more just world.
It challenges us to rethink our own assumptions about what it means to be a hero and what it truly takes to bring about lasting change. But the question remains, will the other creatures accept Milo's offer of peace? Can they overcome their deep-seated mistrust and embrace this radical new vision?
That's the cliffhanger we'll be exploring in Part 3. Will Milo's gamble pay off? Will he succeed in uniting a world divided by fear and prejudice? Join us next time as we dive into the final chapter of this captivating story.
Welcome back to Robots vs. Vampires. I'm Adrian Smith, and I'm still reeling from that epic showdown between Milo and Draxon.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how this story takes us beyond that typical good versus evil battle.
Exactly. Last time we left Milo with a daunting task.
Oh, yeah.
Convincing a world steeped in fear and division to embrace peace and unity.
That's a challenge that can make even the most powerful vampire hesitate.
So tell me, did those supernatural factions actually buy into Milo's vision, or is he just a fangless idealist with a pipe dream?
It wasn't an overnight transformation, but that's what makes this part of the story so compelling.
Oh, really? So it's more of a slow burn, a gradual shift in thinking, rather than a sudden change of heart.
Precisely. Remember, these creatures had lived under Draxon's oppressive rule for centuries.
Right.
Fear and suspicion were deeply ingrained. Yeah, it's like trying to rewrite centuries of history and social conditioning. So how did Milo even begin to bridge that divide?
Well, he drew inspiration from those ancient tales he'd studied.
Oh, okay.
He realized that each supernatural faction, despite its perceived strengths or weaknesses, had something unique to offer.
So instead of focusing on their differences, he highlighted their potential for collaboration.
Exactly. He initiated dialogues, creating spaces for open communication and exchange of ideas.
It's kind of like diplomacy, but on a supernatural scale.
You could say that.
Ah.
And what's interesting is that Milo, despite his youth and lack of traditional vampire authority,
Yeah.
had this incredible ability to connect with others.
It sounds like he was a natural leader, someone who inspired trust and hope.
He listened to their concerns, acknowledged their fears, and spoke with genuine empathy. He made them feel seen and heard.
It's a powerful reminder that true leadership isn't about brute force or intimidation.
Right.
It's about building bridges, understanding different perspectives, and creating an environment where everyone feels valued.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what Milo did. He encouraged them to view their differences not as weaknesses, but as strengths that could complement each other.
It's like the old saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. For instance, he pointed out how the werewolves' heightened senses could serve as an early warning system, protecting vampires from potential threats they might not detect.
Oh, so he was essentially creating a network of interdependence, showcasing the benefits of working together.
Precisely. And over time, as they started to collaborate and experience the advantages of unity firsthand, their mistrust began to dissipate.
It's fascinating how this story highlights the power of shared experiences to break down barriers and foster a sense of community.
It's a testament to the idea that we can overcome even the deepest divisions when we focus on common goals and the well-being of the collective.
So ultimately, did Milo succeed in creating this new world order, this utopia, where supernatural creatures coexist peacefully?
The story ends on a hopeful note. It acknowledges that building lasting peace is an ongoing process, but it shows us that it's possible.
It's a powerful message, especially in a world where conflict and division often dominate the headlines. It reminds us that even the most unlikely heroes can make a difference not through violence or coercion, but through empathy, understanding, and a belief in the power of unity.
It is a call to action for all of us to look beyond our differences, embrace diversity, and work together to create a better future.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Robots vs. Vampires. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of fangless heroes and unexpected alliances, be sure to rate and follow the show for more awesome stories.
And let us know what you think. What other unlikely heroes would you like us to explore? Until next time, keep those imaginations firing, and remember, the most powerful weapons are often the ones we forge ourselves through compassion, ingenuity, and a belief in a brighter future.